It's not just the price of gold that has me so confident about the metal now than ever before since I've started accumulating it. There's a whole lot more to the case that could be made for the metal, and I'm going to talk about what that is and why as we explore. I don't care if you are just a pure silver stacker and have never bought a single gram of gold before. What has been happening in recent history has made a case for gold in and of itself. It's there for a lot of the same reasons why silver is. And by the way, silver is doing very well, at least it is by the time I'm recording this video. And who knows where the price of both gold and silver will be by the time you watch it. But in some ways, it's immaterial, because there's a lot more to the gold and silver than just the price. But gold especially is unique between all of the precious metals out there. And by the way, I love to talk about all of the precious metals. And that includes all the PGMs, the platinum group metals, silver, and of course, gold. But gold is foremost the most stable of the asset classes out there. In fact, it is probably the only metal that one can make a cogent argument that it is still used as money between central banks. And that has been talked about by another channel. Doesn't post as much these days. Belang P talked about that, but it is something that certainly is the case. You see more and more central banks not only exchanging the metals, the gold between them, but also buying more gold. I'm going to be referencing in part a piece here from the CFA Society United Kingdom that talks a little bit about why gold is so important nowadays. But I'm going to insert my views as well in here because it is something that I've been witnessing since paying attention to the markets have moved me much closer to gold. And that started back in 2017. And I'm going to talk about that here later as well. But before we move on, I want to express my gratitude to Summit Metals for sponsoring the channel. And they have some great gold products, fractional gold as well, so check them out. And really good competitive prices, especially for the Eagles in the fractional size. But they have excellent customer service and fast shipping. So check them out at summitmetals.com. And we know about the Wizard of Oz and the Yellow Brick Road is often interpreted as an allegory for the gold standard, a path towards safety and stability amid a world beset by uncertainty. Today, with gold approximately up 75% over the past 5 years, and well, we know John Maynard Keynes' so-called barbarous relic is winning new followers. And by the way, that's a conservative estimate, because if you look at some of the math, there was a point in time where gold has doubled in price since 2022. In fact, as I record this video, it most certainly has. The modern case for gold really rests on several structural pillars. First, there is the vast increase in the money supply since the global financial crisis. In the United States alone, the M2 money supply has increased from approximately $7.5 trillion in 2008 to over $22 trillion in 2025. That's a 190% increase compared to gold's 286% increase over the same period. But it hasn't been just the United States. The Eurozone saw a similar increase, while China appears to be a magnitude larger again. And this is really amplifying the case that is all we already know about gold, and it has certainly proven itself to be a hedge against what this is, and that is causing and creating inflation by printing more money. Now, why would these central banks print more of these dollars? Well, it's largely because governments continue to spend, and so they need more dollars to be able to meet those spending requirements, because taxes ain't going to cut it, folks. You cannot raise taxes enough to meet all of the spending, and that is what causes deficit spending, and that is what adds to the debt, folks. It's a never-ending cycle that has been ramped up big time since 2008. And that is an incredible thing. And that's around 2008 is when I really started paying more attention to what's going on. I've always kind of been aware of it, but that's when I came to my awakening as to what was going on, especially when you watch, The Big Short and other documentaries, or just pay attention to the news. Yes, indeed. In fact, when you have a president who says we need to abandon free market principles in order to preserve the free market, there's something seriously wrong. And in a sense, we're starting to see some of that happen again, even right now with this current president, which I'm not happy about. But that's a whole nother story. And that, again, goes with the notion of no matter who's in power, no matter what party is in power, no matter how anti-establishment they are, they will and can and do use government to their own bidding. And that's unfortunate because that's not constitutional. But that's aside from the point. Gold is constitutional. By the way, stay tuned. I'm going to show you a new gold coin that I just got and why I've been buying a little bit more gold now, sort of at haste. And you should not necessarily follow my example here. But I'm still trying to be as responsible as I can, but I'm going to explain why I did that. And I'm going to also show you another coin that is golden in color that I think should be gold. It's that cool of a design. So stay tuned for that when we get here. Though central banks have slowed or even stopped quantitative easing in recent years, that's an argument that certainly can be pushed back against, especially with regards to our central bank. The liquidity injected remains in the system, contributing to the inflation of asset prices and financial imbalances. U.S. equity markets are near all-time highs, and housing affordability has deteriorated to generational lows. This is called the Cantillon effect. And new money entering the system benefits financial asset holders long before it reaches workers or consumers, creating inequality and economic distortion. Now, second is the erosion of fiscal responsibility and global imbalances. And this is what we're seeing with deteriorating government finances. The U.S. continues to run multi-trillion-dollar annual deficits, while major economies such as Japan, China, and much of Europe face rising debt-to-GDP ratios. Studies like the Bank of America's estimate that every dollar of deficit spending now returns only 58 cents in GDP. This reflects declining marginal returns on government expenditures and signals potential stagflation, not just here in the United States, but around the world. In fact, speaking of the world, what you see in front of you is some of the most common gold bullion coins that are out there, save for this one. This is continental currency. Yes, indeed. The currency of the underground. That's kind of what this represents from the John Wick series. And this is something that I put here to show you that, yes, gold certainly is a metal that we're going to come back to no matter how much technology is out there. We're already starting to see it. Zimbabwe, I mentioned recently, has an enduring gold standard. It is the first nation to do that since everybody else went off the gold standard. And it's in their own way. It may not be perfect, but it is lasting. It is stabilizing to at least to a degree. But the very first gold bullion coin ever created in the 1 ounce size is the Krugerrand. Yes, indeed. Back in 1967, it was the only one that circulated for a number of years until really the late 70s. So that's pretty remarkable. Now, third is trust and geopolitics. This is a big one, folks. We now saw what happened with the weaponization of the dollar and the seizure of Russian central bank reserves in 2022 that has profoundly reshaped perceptions of reserve security. In response, central banks around the world have ramped up their gold purchases. According to the World Gold Council, they have added more than 7,800 tons since 2010. That's almost as much gold as we have, if you believe it's there. That includes over 2,000 tons in the last 3 years alone. The People's Bank of China has led the charge, diversifying aggressively away from the dollar. And that's according to official numbers. Many people feel they have much more than that. Gold has now overtaken the euro to become the second largest reserve asset globally, compared to about 20% of central bank reserves, compared to the euro's 16% and the dollar's 46%. And the dollar's still on top in that regard, which is why we can continue to do what we're doing, and other nations can too, because the vast majority of nations around the world, about 58% of them, either have reserve assets in the dollar or actually use the dollar for transactions around the world. The hegemony is there, and so we can continue to do it until we can't. Now, the other thing we have to think about is that gold remains under siege in developed markets. Basel III rules give sovereign bonds and others more dubious state-linked issuers more favorable treatment than gold, and European regulations still favor even junk-related sovereign debt over the metal. It's not coincidental, but reflects a systematic tilt towards financial repression. So the concept of money in the bank is losing meaning now. As legendary gold investor Julian Baring noted, it is often better to price currencies in gold, not the other way around. Since 1971, the United States dollar has lost about 98.8% of its value against gold, and the British pound over 99.3%. Now, that's not against itself, that's against gold, but that gives you an idea exactly what's happening now with the dollar compared to gold. And that is a cogent argument to have it in your portfolio. And I did that, started in 2017. I already had some gold in my portfolio, or in my stack, really, because I don't have any gold in my, quote, portfolio. It's in my stack. I always buy the physical. I go ahead and eat those premiums, which are smaller compared to gold, to silver, and I hold on to it. And it has served me well in that regard. It's a store of value that has done quite well. Now, I would be very sad if gold's price were to be chopped in half, but you know what? If that were to happen, it would be sad only for a moment, because you don't lose unless you sell. And with dollar cost averaging, I know that likely probably won't happen, but it will turn around again. I don't see that happening, but you always have to prepare for a big drop in price. And I always do whenever I buy a single ounce of gold. But right now, I'm thinking it's going to go the other way, which is why I've made another purchase. Now, you may be familiar with this coin. This is probably the most famous of the Cayman Island series of the animals, and this is the marlin. And I got one of these in gold back when the Queen was the sovereign. Well, fast forward 5 years later, and there's no monarch on these coins anymore. It still has a face value of $5, which is grossly undervalued compared to an ounce of gold. But this is the Cayman Islands' newest for 2025 with no monarch. That's why I got it. You see that turtle there? Well, this is the sea turtle. Yes, or the loggerhead turtle here in 1 ounce. So beautiful. I love the security features on this, and the waves kind of there. You sort of see them in the background on this side, but certainly on this side, and gives a feeling that it is underwater. Beautifully done, made by Scottsdale Mint. Wanted to add this to the collection. Limited issue of 1,000 pieces. So there is that. And so this really kind of brings me the idea that I think gold is going to continue to go up from here, which is why I did make and stretch myself a bit with some purchases recently, with some collectible coins as well, although I did get one other bullion coin on order that I'll show you when it gets here. And I could be wrong. Do not do what I do just because I do it. Do your own research, but I have a feeling gold's going to continue to climb, so I'm kind of making some purchases thinking that's going to happen. But I'm very careful about it. Not doing it necessarily out of fear, but under maybe trepidation, maybe concern, I don't know, or what my gut is telling me. But I would never tell you to do what I'm doing just because of that. And so that is the case. Now, here's one coin I would love to see in gold that I think is really, really cool. And that is the one of the newer issues of the dollar, innovation dollars. And this is kind of a wild, bold representation of liberty with a lot of negative space. You see that gear there. That gear would have been cool as a kind of a faint background image behind the statue covering the whole screen. That would have been cool if they did that, but they didn't. But this design here is probably one of my favorite of the whole series. It's the shuttle taking off. Love the symmetry of the piece. Really, really cool indeed. And so this is from Florida, the space shuttle. This would be really cool in gold. So there you have it. And that's my feelings. I think gold it's been done very well. Any kind of pullbacks we've seen in the last 5, maybe even 7 years have been marginal compared to the gains. And I think that is kind of where we're headed from now. So, but I could be wrong on some of that. But I've been right about my predictions for gold every single year I've given them. And that was starting in 2020. So I don't know. Who knows? But does not necessarily mean I'm going to be right again making these purchases and recent purchases I've made. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Hope you found this video informative, insightful, and educational. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.